We are ready.
All right. It is 9:26 on September 8th, and we're calling to order the Business and Governance Committee. Please call the roll.
Yes. Roberta Spoon,
Here.
Thomas Battaglia.
Here.
Michelle Bush.
Here.
Charlie Hogquist.
Here.
Paul Kaufman
Here.
and Paul Lewis.
Melody, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
All right. I'd like to remind everybody when voting on the action items, Melody will be calling the roll for votes. And when you make a motion or you're offering a second, please state your name first. And we have a little owl here for our audio, so please speak up. Melody, do we have any public comment today?
We do not have any public comment, Madam Chair.
All right, we have 3 action items today. And the first is the adoption of the calendar for 2023. And our CEO will take it away.
Thank you, Bobby. It's a pleasure to see all the committee members this morning. In your board materials, or excuse me, your committee materials is a proposed calendar for calendar year 2023 with our meeting dates. And we present that calendar in advance, so just to help with calendaring. So for your information and approval is next year's calendar.
All right, any questions? Let's call for the vote.
Need a first.
Both
Oh, we need
motion
it
and
first.
second.
Tom Battaglia will move it.
Tom Battaglia?
Second.
Paul
Thank you.
Kaufman, second.
Thank you.
Let's call for the vote.
Okay, Roberta Spoon,
Yes.
Thomas Battaglia, Michelle Bush,
Yes.
Charlie Hogquist,
Aye.
Paul Kaufman,
Yes.
and Paul Lewis.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 6-0.
That's great. Moving on to action item number 2. This is the amendment for board rules 6.10 sub C and 6.40 sub B. And Mr. Redemaker will explain all of that to us.
Thank you. Just in a way of background, in June 30th of 2021, the SDCERS portfolio had a very substantial return of about 25%. Later that year, in November, the board approved a drop interest crediting rate of less than 1%. And so we got a little feedback from the membership of saying, the portfolio returned 25%, you're crediting drop accounts with 1%, that just seems like a disconnect. And so in January of this year, staff presented a drop interest rate calculation methodology review, where we looked at the methodology used to create the drop account for the coming year, the interest credits for the coming year, and also the drop annuity. And that in that analysis, we looked at the current rate methodology, which was created by the board back in 2009, based on their expert opinions from Chiron, Investment Council, and Fiduciary Council. And in that time, we were crediting the accounts with the actuarial assumed rate. And at that time, it was 8%. So 8% would be credited to the drop accounts. And also, if somebody took one of their lump sums, when they exited drop, they would be annuitized with that 8%. So the board at that time thought about that and said, well, that is maybe not the best way to fund those drop program benefits. So what they decided to do was take a more of a less risk approach and decided to create the interest crediting rate based on bond indexes, not the long-term actuarial rate of return. So they looked at the drop accounts of using a 5-year treasury rate and high quality bond index. And for the drop annuity, they used a 20-year, because that's a much longer time period for paying benefits over the remainder of the person's useful life for a 20-year period. Again, treasury rates, the 20-year treasury rate, 20-year high quality bond index, and the 20-year PBGC rate. And the board at 2009 was thinking, really the trust accounts for the bond annuity accounts, excuse me, for the drop accounts, they're really not investment accounts. The drop accounts don't have risk of loss in them. So they don't fluctuate as a 401k account would be. They're pretty much going to be getting that bond rate. So if the portfolio has a negative year, those drop accounts aren't posted with negative returns. They always get the bond rate. And similarly with the long-term drop annuities, if there is a very bad year in the portfolio, those bond rates stay the same when that drop annuity was first established for the member. So really the drop accounts don't suffer that downside market. They participate in the upside, but don't participate in the downside. So in 2009, that's why the board decided we're going to change the methodology from the long-term actuarial rate to these bond indices. And so we fast forward a little bit. Also, the bottom line of the review was the calculation is still appropriate. So using that methodology still makes sense today. We don't want to do risk transfer from the drop accounts into the rest of the portfolio. It's interesting, the drop accounts represent about 5 or 6% of the total fund. The monies are commingled for investment. They're accounted for separately, but they represent about 5 or 6% of the fund. So they're really, those payouts are really backstopped by the rest of the portfolio, between 94 to 95% of the fund. So there's really a very low risk for those drop accounts. So as part of that January review, staff also noticed that in the drop annuity calculation, the PBGC 20-year rates seem to be a little bit more volatile in recent periods compared to when the board approved this methodology back in 2009. And so staff recommended that we continue to look at that to see if there's anything that we would like to do differently with that drop annuity calculation. And in looking at that calculation and talking with our plan actuary, there was really no clear advantage or disadvantage for changing the current methodology for creating the drop annuity rate. So staff is not recommending changing our current methodology. So that's a lot of backstory to our action item today. During the time we were reviewing the drop calculation was about the same time we started hearing a lot of information from our investment consultants, from the media, that potentially we're going to be going into a high inflationary environment. I'm sure we could debate today. Some people believe that we're going to continue with low inflation. Some people believe it's going to be normal inflation. Other folks believe it's going to be high inflation. But in looking at the context of the drop account calculation, we found an unintended consequence that during periods of high inflation, those drop accounts could inordinately be benefited while the rest of the portfolio or the long-term funding is going through periods of stress. As outlined in the memo, we can see that back in the 1980s, high inflation really caused those bond rates to go well up. In the 5-year bond rates, they were in excess of our long-term actuarial rate. They were getting as high as 12%, 15%, 16%. And during those times, there was also periods of the portfolio was actually having negative returns. Not every year, but there was some years where the portfolio was actually struggling quite a bit. And there was 4 recessions during that time period. So when we have that, really what we're doing is we're transferring investment risk from the drop accounts to primarily the plan sponsors who are backstopping the portfolio. So one way to mitigate that would be to put a limit on the amount of drop interest that we would credit to drop accounts to be our long-term actuarial assumption, which is currently 6.5%. This would be both for the drop accounts for crediting interest while the members are in the drop account for up to 5 years. And it'd also be a limit for the drop annuity calculation for when people exit the drop. And one thing I was thinking about, I was like going, well, do we really need to do this? And there was 2 things. One is right now, I don't believe in the current year coming up in November, the board is going to be looking at drop accounts. it's not going to be impacted this year, but I believe in market cycles, and I believe that someday we will go through another period of high inflation, and this condition can occur. And I think it's better to address it now rather than later. The other thing I was thinking about was magnitude. Is this really a significant problem or not a significant problem? And so with the help of Monty Prieto, we did a deep dive into our database, and we said for everybody that has entered drop since the program started to today, so what was their ending drop account balance? And the average since that entire time is about $250,000 when somebody exits drop. Now, I will say that there are some folks that are exiting nowadays have a larger account balance, but this is just the average since the program started. And so I said, well, if we take a look at what was the drop annuity rate in the current year that the board approved last November was 2.1%. So you take that $250, apply that 2.1% annuity factor, that ends up in about a monthly payment of about $1,200 per month. Again, these are just roughly rounded because they're easier to say. And if you just add those up for 20 years, that's about $300,000. So that 250 grows to about $300,000, just using simple math. If we use 6.5% in that calculation, $1,200 goes to about $1,800 a month. And that $250,000 is now in the series of payments is now $400,000. If we go into a period of higher inflation, let's say 12%, that $1,200 payment now goes to $2,600 a month. And that $250,000 is now about $600,000. So looking at the amount of interest and the drop annuity rate is actually meaningful. And so really what we're looking at is if we're looking at the long-term funding of the plan, and when we look at the retirement benefits, we think our long-term rate in the good years and bad, in the upside and downside, but in the long run, we're really trying to hit 6.5%. It seems very logical and appropriate to also make sure that we do not provide the drop accounts to participate in more upside, but not the downside. So that is kind of the gist of the decision today. Again, this is a decision for the board, for this committee and this board, so that we don't end up with these unintended consequences into the future. So are we at a critical crisis today? No. Do you need to take action today? No. You could welcome to not take action today, trusting that we will never have high inflation ever again. Hopefully it works out that way. I would like that, but I believe in market cycles. Another possible action for the committee and the board would be to change the philosophy from 2009 from using this more as a trust account, but to make it more of an investment account and actually increase the upside participation. Staff is not recommending that. The committee and the board could also make a decision to further mitigate the risk. And instead of trying to credit accounts and annuitize with a contemporary bond rate, you could change that to just be a cash rate, a Fed bank rate, which would actually mitigate more risk. And staff's not recommending that. So we believe the current staff believes, in talking with our experts, including Chiron, our actuary, that the current methodology is appropriate. So using the bond rates is appropriate, but we also recommend that mitigating the unintended consequence of perhaps high inflation, providing accounts, drop account interest and drop account annuities in excess of our long-term earnings assumption is also an appropriate action by the committee and the board. And I tried to make that as simple as possible, and I'm glad to answer questions. Paul.
Thank you for your explanation. Quick question. So your staff's recommending we still use the bond rate.
Correct.
Cap it at the planning rate of 6.5%.
Yeah.
Would that ever go down below?
So I cleverly worded the recommendation to cap it at the investment return assumption, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. I believe, we're biased by our current environment. There was a time where we believed that the long-term portfolio would earn 8%. We used to be, when we were just in long bonds, we were like at 3 and 4%, and it climbed to 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we were going for 8, and then people's outlook changed over time and said, you know what, perhaps 8 is not our long-term outlook, and we have now are currently at 6.5. So if the board would change the interest rate assumption, then it could change that crediting rate.
We vote on this drop rate once a year, is that correct?
Every November, yes. And that it is used to set the interest crediting rate for the coming calendar year. And also when people exit drop, and if they choose to annuitize that, we call it the lump sum.
Yeah.
They can annuitize. The important thing is that there's no requirement to do that annuity. The person can take that lump sum and spend it, invest it, or purchase an annuity on the open market. So our rules don't, they're not a captive audience with regards to these rules.
Do we have any other questions?
I have a question or a few questions. What's the current bond rate today? Or in November when we approve this?
Actually, we don't know. It is a rolling average based on September 30th.
We'll get that for the November.
Yes, but I believe it is going to be, I was just playing around with this about 2 weeks ago, and I don't want to misquote. Have you done any preliminary calculations? Nope. So I believe it is going to be, they're going to be greater than they were last year. So the current rate is 0.8% for the interest, and I believe it will be above 1% for crediting interest. I think it'll be above 1%. And also with the annuity factor is 2.1, I think it's going to be much higher. It will be at least 100 basis points of 1% greater. So they are going up because it's a rolling average of what's happening in the market today.
And then when someone enters drop, they're locked in at that rate for the entire duration of their drop period.
So when,
Change here will be.
yes, so during the up to 5-year drop period, and our firefighter members can actually extend it a little bit longer, but generally you have up to 5 years. And so we'll just assume everybody stays 5 years. So every year, the board in November sets the rate for the coming year. And so the rate does fluctuate on an annual basis, depending on what the bond rates are doing.
For the annuity also?
Also for the annuity. And I'm sorry, thank you. So for the annuity, that rate is locked in for the life of that annuity. So that, to me, that is the largest consequence. If bond rates happen to be 10% on the year that the person exits drop, that 10% annuity rate would stay with them for the next 20 years. And that is a very large unintended consequence of disconnect.
Do you outsource the annuity?
That's interesting. There's a lot of news in the media about private companies selling off their annuity streams to insurance companies. Traditionally, SDCERS has not done that. It is a possibility. With that, generally the company that outsources that annuity still has the responsibility to make good on that annuity, and you're paying a premium for reserves and a profit
Sure.
factor to the insurance company. You hope the insurance company will be around in 20 years.
Greg, in essence, we're eliminating the upside risk to the planning.
Correct. I was having a very,
So bond rate could go to 20%, in which case we eliminate it to 6.5% plus we decide to change it.
right. And it really comes down to a philosophical factor. Do we believe the drop account should act as an investment account, like a 401k account? Or is it a trust account where we're holding the monies in trust with an amount of interest, but not trying to make it have the risk and reward of an investment account. And as I said, in 2009, the board was looking at it. Well, you've got a lot of the reward, but there's no risk. And I believe that's why they changed the philosophy at that time.
And Greg, earnings, investment earnings in excess of the 6.5%, they stay and where do those excess earnings go?
Certainly. So all the earnings stay within the fund. The funds are all commingled for purposes of investment. And when the investment consultant and the actuary talk about, what is our tolerance for risk and what should our long-term investment return be, they're thinking that we're going to go through those periods where there's going to be they're in excess, I think, in excess of the rate, and also times where it's below the rate. Like this past year, it was negative 1.7%.
It strikes me that this drop account didn't really get trust on, not an investment account. Off base. Anybody feel different?
I think it looks like a traditional annuity account.
Yeah.
That you can buy from insurance companies. And when you buy an annuity, you receive that interest rate at the time for the remainder of the term.
So it's like trust.
It is a trust.
Yeah.
Mhm. I'm wondering why it's commingled and why it isn't invested separately in those same rates.
That is a possibility. Traditionally, investing things together is for economies of scale.
Right.
Works well. It is possible to carve out sub-accounts. It just the cost of investing goes up, and but it is possible to do that. But the challenge is, and you have to actually probably go back to the January 2022 memo, is that when we look at the plan documents, it says that the drop accounts are vested as soon as money goes into them. And there's no provision to actually put a fluctuation of market
Right.
in them so that they don't participate in the downside risk. So in the current year, we're crediting interest rate, even though compared to last year at almost 25%, this year we're crediting at 0.8%, but the portfolio, halfway through that period was down negative 1.7%. And so from our perspective, it does look like a trust account. And I guess that's I kind of went off on a tangent there, but you can invest it separately, but we don't. How's that?
But it's accounted for separately.
Yes.
And there's also the liquidity factor. I mean, these need to be liquid funds for
Yes.
payment of the annuities and for the 5-year people.
Yes, and the benchmark for the drop account is 5 years, because generally members can stay up to 5 years, but you're right, they can actually leave at any time during that 5 year. Interestingly, in the drop annuity is that if someone decides they can take a lump sum, or they can annuitize, or they can do a hybrid of both. They can take some money as a lump sum and annuitize the rest. And then they have a one-time election while they're in the annuity phase to sit there and go, I don't want an annuity anymore. Can you please give me the balance of my account as a lump sum? So yes, liquidity is a factor.
How much do we have in drop account liabilities?
That is in my memo, so just give me 1
I
second.
think it's 576 million.
It's about between 5 and 6% of the total portfolio. 576, yeah. Very good.
Since drop is no longer available for new members, do we have an estimated year that drop's going to essentially go away? This won't be an issue. 50 years, 60 years.
I like to have fun at work, so I'm gonna go, it's definitely less than 100 years. But when I did the January 2022 memo, I gave some historical information on the participation versus the account balances. And we're still at the point now where the population that can still go into drop is significantly large. So we're going to have the drop program with us for a considerable amount of time, just in getting new entrants. And then again, they have a 5-year period. And again, if you annuitize it, that can be up to a 20-year period. So, Cynthia,
All exactly correct, but just to give a little perspective on it, the drop program for the city ended in 2005. We haven't been a member before, and for the Portland Airport, it was 2006.
Yep.
So you can kind of guess by adding years on and stuff, there's might be a few other outliers, but there's a good 4,000 people right now that can still are still eligible to enter, including the two of us who are talking right now.
So where's the blowback going to occur if we vote?
well,
How are the members going to feel?
so when I opened up my comments, we were talking about how the members were really happy that we had a nearly 25% net return
Yeah.
in 2020, 2021, as of June 30th, 2021. And they're saying, well, how come I didn't get that 25% in my drop account? And yet, I don't think they actually said that, but they were
Yeah.
just, what's the disconnect? And so I think it comes from a perception of their philosophy is that it's an investment account. And, they would like to maximize their holdings, and they would really love a investment return
Sure.
as high as practically possible.
That's good until it goes down.
So I think that would be, when we talk about the pushback or the folks that would be against that decision. I think the board probably felt some of that back in 2009 because it used to be at the 8% actuarial rate. And they said, well, let's use the bond rates, which mitigates some of that risk transfer, mitigates some of that disconnect. And again, I still say we should hit that middle ground.
Yeah.
But again, I still think we need, in periods of high inflation, to put the cap on the rate itself.
So this may be a issue of re-education, in fact, that this is a trust.
Yes.
And that it needs to remain liquid. So
Right.
it's not
Yeah.
going to be invested in equity, the equity market. Any more questions?
One question. Have we considered additional option after members completed draw of in addition to offering a new having an investment fund, having it part of the investment? So if they can take some rolled over or keep it in investment.
As part of this analysis, I did not consider that. I still feel that the mission of SDCERS is actually to deliver retirement benefits. We're not an investment company. We don't allow additional contributions to be invested in commingled with a trust. The member has that option if they withdraw, and they can invest that. There's a lot of different products out there that they can invest that money themselves.
So the answer is no.
Answers. No.
One additional point, sorry.
No, go ahead.
With respect to the benefits paid for a new, that is capable to forecasting for our cash needs. So when we take payrolls, which can include lump sum rollovers of drop amounts or the payment of annuity payments, that is something that the investment group has to factor in. It isn't like that entire pool is sitting in liquid cash. It's part of our investment portfolio and our investment policy. So forecasts.
And Ted, do you account for the fund separately? Is there a line item for this fund?
It's think of drop as restricted retained earnings.
Okay,
So it's its own, and use the term reserve, but it's
Right.
restricted retained earnings. So we use drop. Yes.
thank you. Any other questions? Okay, that was a wonderful presentation. It was very clear. Thank you.
Oh,
I move that we approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right.
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Paul.
Paul,
Paul Kaufman, thank you.
call for the vote.
Okay, Roberta Spoon,
Yes.
Thomas Battaglia,
Yes.
Michelle Bush,
Yes.
Charlie Hogquist,
Aye.
Paul Kaufman,
Yes.
and Paul Lutz.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 6-0.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg, and you may sit down. Johnny, you're up.
I'm a little more simple-minded, and thank goodness my topic is more simple. Good morning. Before you are a lot of governance documents that we reviewed in the normal course of business. We're suggesting mostly minor changes, but a few more significant ones. The significant ones are highlighted in my cover memo, but I do want to talk about 2 of them today with you. One, there was some question among staff of what happens when we don't have a quorum of a committee, board. What can we do? Can we not vote? Can we not do anything? So I wanted to make that more clear through the committee's charter, saying if we don't have a quorum of a standing committee, then we can't conduct any business or even meet. And so I think that clarifies my understanding of what should happen in a meeting. So that's the first recommendation I'd like to highlight. The second is looking at Rule 5.30, which is a rule created back in 1992 based on an erroneous summary handbook given to a member in 1973. It concerns an error that the handbook said when a member dies, they should get 100% continuance instead of what the statute says, which is a 50% continuance. So I believe the law has been clarified such that this board isn't able to provide benefits that were erroneously stated by staff or whatnot. So we recommend deleting the rule and instead handling errors like we do every other issue error, which is through the normal administrative appeals process. So should this issue come up again, you get this through your normal business and governance committee administrative process. With that, I don't have any other remarks. I'll take any questions, and I would like a motion to approve these items.
You have any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the items.
All right, that's Paul.
Thank you.
There's a first, I need a second.
Charlie Hogquist will second.
It's great. Do we call for the vote?
Yes. Roberta Spoon,
Yes.
Thomas Battaglia,
Yes.
Michelle Bush, Charlie Hogquist,
Aye.
Paul Kaufman,
Yes.
and Paul Lutz.
Yes.
Great, motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. All right, that's it for the action items. Moving on to the staff reports. Member services, Cynthia. Cynthia's going to give 2 reports today. Cynthia's going to do member services and benefits administration.
Clearly, it's your lucky day. Nice to see you
I
all.
want to see the dance.
Sometimes one must wait. Thank you. So today, as Bobby said, I am going to provide the member services report and the benefits administration report as Marcel's understudy. At the last board meeting, you were introduced to Sarema Valenzuela, and I talked about the great work of the call center, which I love to do all the time. Since then, Sarema was promoted to fill the retirement counselor position that was vacated when Rosemary retired. So exciting to have internal growth and that background. So she's currently in training and of course, helping with the call center. But additionally, the City of San Diego holds an annual scholarship program. It's offered as a partnership between the City of San Diego, National University, and Cal Coast Credit Union. And one full ride scholarship is awarded annually to a dedicated, high-performing city employee. Well, what do you know? Sarema was the unanimous winner of the highly competitive process for a scholarship to earn her bachelor's degree at National University.
Wow.
So the other cool part is a virtual ceremony was held on August 11th, where Sarema was honored by Mayor Todd Gloria and the leadership teams from the city, National University, and Cal Coast leadership teams, and board member Thomas Battaglia was there. It was the event of the season. Congratulations to Sarema and appreciate everyone's support. More kudos. So you read in my report that communications manager Jessica Taylor was selected as SDCERS Employee of the Year for her exceptional work on the Proposition B team.
with delivering and with developing and delivering the Proposition B seminars and webinars to a whole bunch of city employees and helping to answer the hundreds of questions received from employees. Part of the award for winning this is you get to run the computer at the SDCERS offsite board meeting. So now for the full Proposition B update. In the statistics section of my member services report, I always report on the number of SDCERS members broken down by plan sponsor and status. I find it very interesting and I use a pivot table to do so. You'll note that the City of San Diego membership stats have made a significant jump due to the addition of approximately 3,200 new Proposition B employees that SDCERS successfully added to our membership in July, plus 150 new hires. So welcome new members, and a big shout out to all the SDCERS employees who worked so hard along with the city employees to make this happen. It was no easy task. So when people ask you how big the pension system is, and they don't want to know the dollar amount, you tell them we have 25,000 members. Boom, biggest ever. So about their money. SDCERS received the funding for these. Yes.
Sorry, that includes the 3,300 people we just brought up.
Yep, I'm rounding it to 3,200,
But
exactly.
excludes the other 3,000 have not yet.
Yep.
Made a decision.
Yep,
Okay.
yep, it's gonna get even more exciting. I promise to give you the new number when I get there. Excellent job following all things, sir. So we recently got the money for these approximately 3,200 new members that came from the Principal Financial Group. And that's the agency that holds on to all city employees' 401k and the supplemental savings account, which was exactly the plan, right? That's what they were before the pension. They were allowed the pension. Now we move it over. So the big excitement at SDCERS is that these SDCERS member accounts have now been updated. We got a few little one-offs to work on, but it was very exciting. In all honesty, everybody's running around the office cheering. It's a very big deal. So an important part of this process is informing these people that their money has been moved from their personal accounts over to SDCERS. It's what they've been waiting for, right? So to do so, we send a letter to new members welcoming them to SDCERS with a brief overview of how their accounts are funded. And we ask them to register on our member portal, name their beneficiaries, and view their account information. This is an automated process for all new members, and we do it every 2 weeks, regular process. But this was a very unusual situation with about 3,200 letters generated in one batch. So with much planning and great work from Jess over here, a number of other people, excellent work by the IT team who had to pull an electronic file in the middle of the night so it didn't print on the printers and send it off to the mail house. This is 8 months of planning, perfectly executed this week. I am so proud, because it would have been not good if it didn't work out very well. So the welcome letters were mailed 2 days ago, and we are very, very pleased. SDCERS is continuing to work with the city on the reconciliation of funds, and there continue to be new members because Prop B employees who are not yet members become eligible for membership when their employment status changes, such as coming back from long-term disability or becoming a permanently benefited employee. So it's always moving. So talking about the third wave that Paul was asking about, the city is actively negotiating with the unions regarding this third group, who are former employees hired during Prop B who have separated service. Then, to give you a little preview for the November meeting, there will be an information item presented to you in November as we talk about some final pieces of how everything is reconciled, and then I believe there'll be an action item in January. So we have much to look forward to. That concludes my report. Does anybody have any questions? Perfect, I covered everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And congratulations to everybody. Yeah. Right. David. Oh, okay. Michelle, thank you.
Thank you. I'm filling in for David today. Good morning, committee members. I'd like to provide you an update that's not included in this month's status report. The weekend of August 19th, our property management company, Regent's Property, performed a complete shutdown of power to our building. All tenants, including SDCERS, were impacted by this outage. IT coordinated our technical vendors to gracefully shut down all systems and devices by 6 p.m. Friday night, August 19th. That included anything with a power source, desktops, printers, fax machines, servers, and the local area network. The building restored power on schedule on the Sunday morning. The technical team reconvened and brought all systems back online. I'm happy to report the process went relatively smoothly with no outages on servers, no network issues, and very minimal desktop issues. And that concludes my report. I'm
Oh,
happy to
wow.
answer any questions.
Relatively.
Relatively.
I have a question. So you were given that heads up that this was gonna happen. What if there's a blackout and you guys don't have a heads up? What's that look like?
We have a UPS that runs, we estimated it.
What's a UPS?
Universal power source,
Uninterrupted.
uninterrupted, thank you, David, uninterrupted power source.
Supply.
Thank you, David. That can support our environment until we're alerted at that time. We can get engaged and then gracefully shut things down remotely.
So is that like a 2-hour notice?
I believe, David, did we measure it's 2 hours?
Yeah, we've actually had an outage and it lasted for 2 hours and then started coming down.
Gracefully.
And you're able to do everything you need to do in the 2 hours?
Correct, yes. In fact, when we did this outage, the outage on the 19th, we didn't start until after business hours at 5 o'clock. So we had to have everything shut down by 6 p.m. So we had less than an hour to get all devices, all equipment shut down. Yes.
Is that just an SDCERS capability or was that the whole point?
Everybody was impacted.
Yeah. The UPS.
That's for our data center. So that is only supporting our data center, which is on the 3rd floor, 4th floor.
Oh, you don't have one for your computer at home? Can I tap in?
You know, with the news of the rolling blackouts, has there been any provision to advise all the downtown businesses that that will happen? A rolling blackout?
I'm not aware of that.
I just know as a member of the community, my phone went crazy telling me that the state of California said that the power grid is being stressed, thank you, and we should save energy. But the city of San Diego has been putting out news flashes that they're actually shutting buildings down early, like at 3 p.m. and sending employees home. So my big concern is that if we have a power outage, I feel very confident that our UPS will enable us to gracefully shut down our information systems. But then you have problems that, you can flush the toilet once and all of your air conditioning goes out. So power outages are very difficult because sometimes they last a very short period of time and sometimes they're very extended. And so from a staffing perspective, when power outages happen, most likely you're wrapping up operations for the day and sending everybody home.
2 hours. Expand that.
2 hours to shut down all of our systems.
2 hours of backup. Juice.
In our experience, we haven't ran out of time. I believe it's enough for our environment. Yes.
Yep. I'm not a technology expert, but at my prior employer, we had these UPS supplies and they're giant.
Yeah.
They're just giant batteries. And so we were considering that. And since we own the building, we decided to put in a giant tank of diesel fuel and put in a giant generator. Yeah, this big diesel generator. But that was extremely expensive and costly just for that backup. In an extended period of time, we would most likely declare a disaster and go to our remote site. Hopefully they would have power. It's not in California. It's not in California. It is not. They won't even tell me because it's a secret.
Do you have redundancy somewhere else in the county? You have systems that have the same information elsewhere, like in any disaster. If the building was taken down, you have the same information in the cloud or in some other location. It's what we do, that's what we have redundancy in our account, so I was just wondering.
Yeah.
If something happened downtown and you were out for days, what would happen?
To me, there's a variety of ways to do business resumption or disaster recovery. You can do a mirrored hot site where you actually have your own computer and have it all loaded up. I've seen, although it's very uncommon, you could partner with another organization like another retirement system, and you can have some of their capacity. But we have a hot site as part of our disaster recovery, and they get our data and our systems, and we can actually operate with that redundancy. There is, a timeline, because whenever you shut down, you're only as good as your last backup, right? But we back up regularly.
If I can expand on that, so our business continuity has multiple layers of backups. We do backups to tape in case there was an interruption to our warm site. That warm site that Greg's referencing is real-time replication. So the moment that we turn off our connection to that warm site, the data is live as of that moment. So it's not a hotspot or a hot site where we can log into it at a moment's time, but the data is real time.
This basically just backs up the servers that are down on the 4th floor, not the equipment that's going to be up on the 8th floor.
So for the move
Yeah.
that we're moving up to the 8th floor, our data center is remaining untouched. So the data center is going to stay on the 3rd floor. Third floor untouched.
Yeah.
Offices and end user equipment will move up to the 8th floor.
They backed up as well or not?
Desktops are not backed up.
Okay.
People authenticate to our files to the network. Go ahead.
So I want to say, yes, things are backed up. So if you're operating through the network, so I have a drive that's assigned to me on the network.
Yeah.
Everything that I save to that drive, which is I use every day, is
Yeah.
backed up. If I go rogue and go into my standalone
Yeah.
hard drive,
You're on your own.
that is, and we tell people, please don't do that.
Yeah.
Do not use that, Yeah, things are backed up.
So this basically just gives you enough time to shut down gracefully.
Gracefully. So there's no data loss or no
Right, but if we have a
failure of
blackout for the last few days, we're just SOL.
I think at that time we declare a disaster and we defer to our warm site.
With the 2-hour down, does that require staff to be involved? I mean, if it happened over the weekend, would somebody need to come in and do anything?
They would, yes.
Mhm.
Like in the
So
middle
we,
of the night.
yeah, so we would be notified and most likely and or Michelle would be the person that comes in and gracefully shuts everything down.
Michelle, where do you live?
Ironically, I'm right up the hill from work, so just skateboard down.
And what does gracefully look like?
It means that when you shut down your Windows computer at home, you run a shutdown command
Yeah,
and it goes through a sequence of steps so that it shuts down properly. So the next time you start it up, you don't have files that are corrupt and you don't fry your computer itself. It will come back up. The hardware and the software actually comes back up and will operate as expected. So bringing it down gracefully is a very important part of the process.
I see. And then just turning it off.
No, you don't want to just turn it off. You need to shut it down and let the systems go through their shutdown sequence.
All right, well, thank you. Very good report. Does anybody have any other questions? Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
And we have reports included in our committee materials that we're not going to have live presentations, but I assume everybody's read them. Are there any questions on the additional reports? One thing I would like to mention is Ted, again, for the 14th consecutive year, received the Certificate of Excellence from the Government Accounting Group, which is just a tremendous accomplishment. And although he receives it every year, I don't want to minimize it. It's very difficult to get and very few organizations obtain that. So congratulations to you. I know it takes a lot of people to put all of that together. So thank you to everybody, but we're very proud of you.
Thank you.
And and having lived through the period where this organization couldn't get a financial statement out. You know, that we heard from Johnny, took a couple of years to get an audited financial statement out. This is really a tremendous accomplishment, so thank you.
I do have one question. This is more facetious than anything else. I read our report of our travel and training report, and all of us who went to the Calipers General Assembly Mission Day, the fee that we were charged was $250, except for myself, this was $270. Is that a typo or did they overcharge it?
I would have to look into it. I could surmise the answer if you'd let me.
Sure. I just thought it was kind of interesting.
We could have been very good fiduciaries and done early bird registration. But- Oh, I surmised incorrectly. It was parking.
I was just curious. I saw that and I said, gee, why is that sticking out?
All right, are there any, Greg, do you have any additional comments?
No, but just thank you very much for allowing me to present something technical today. And I just really appreciate all the questions and your deliberations. That was good
Well, you
work.
did a good job.
Good committee work. Thank you.
All right, any questions from the board or staff or questions or comments? I assume there's no closed session. Is that correct? And so, given all of that, it's 10:17 and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Bob.